Live. What's up, everybody? I got my buzzer. I got my soundboard set up. Jeff, I don't know if you're familiar, but I have my nerd got me I fucking unplugged it. I'm fucking.
You're too radical, bro. You're too radical.
Fucking started off fucked up here. All right. First off, moderators. I don't mind a spirited debate tonight. People might get passionate, and that's fine. But we're going to be gentlemanly. We're going to treat each other with respect, even if it gets heated. Anybody that is obviously being inflammatory, ban them. And I don't mean a timeout, like hide them from this channel. I don't want them back ever. So, mods, if you could just do that for me, I'd appreciate it. Hello to everybody that's saying hello right now. And I don't know how many people are watching, but there's a shitload of people on here. And we'll get started with my friend Jeff Kirkham. Jeff, if you would like to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah. Hey, James, thanks for having me on the show. I'm Jeff Kirkham. I run Ready Man, and I'm also the inventor of Rat's Tourniquet, and which has led to my infamy here on the social media sphere for the last little bit over what I'd argue is a huge misunderstanding. But yeah, James, we've known each other now.
That's my first point. He called me the other day and said, "Oh man, this fucking thing's blowing up. I don't know what to do." And I said, "Throw gas on that shit, man. Fuck those motherfuckers. They're making you famous."
Infamy has a place, I guess. Infamy has a place.
I've lived through enough of that stuff. But I apologize, Jeff. Please continue.
No, and so the Special Forces guy, I racked up like 28 years.
God damn it. Shelton, you motherfucker.
We're back. Can you hear me now?
Okay, so 28 years ago.
Okay, so I was 28 years in Special Forces, and the last 13 of that I was in a top secret counter-terrorist unit, and we worked with Indige forces, and so there'd be 3 or 4 Americans, and we'd have 200 or so Iraqis or Afghans. And so anyways, I retired a few years ago, and we started up a couple of different businesses, and one of them is Ready Man, and one of them was Rats had actually been going. I had designed this thing about 10 years ago, and then licensed it out to a vendor, and they'd been selling them overseas to the Iraqis and to the Afghans for several years, and sent, I don't know, thousands over there for them guys. And then I brought it here domestically, and you and Paul Markle were actually pushing responsible concealed carry at that time. And it was like, look, if you're carrying a gun, you need to have a tourniquet. And so we found each other. I'm not sure who introduced us, but we found each other, and the rest is history, as they say, history. I mean, there's gaps in that stuff, but it'll probably come out during our conversation here.
And so when I met Jeff, there's a bunch of people in this industry that are just, full of shit and stuff like that. But you can talk to Jeff for 5 minutes about something, and okay, this guy understands all the pieces. And you might be inclined to think he said, "Oh, I'm in a top secret unit." That might be bullshit. It's not bullshit. Too many people in this community know who he is for that to be bullshit. And when I first saw the tourniquet, I liked it from the first time I saw it, because I've seen 2 people die out from mortal wounds, and it makes you really start thinking about this stuff on a very fundamental level. And so when we first started talking about him, I was like, "Hey, this is great." And he's like, "Man, can you tell people about it?" I've already started telling people about it. And so that's how I kind of got caught up in all this thing. He's never given me $1. He did give me some tourniquets, but he's never given me $1 to help him promote this. I promoted it because I believed in it. And now,
if I can cut you off, James,
yeah,
and I'll tell like your followers, like when Evan and I were first starting out on business, and I've said this repeatedly, and I'll say it again and again. James Yeager is the first guy from the tactical industry that he actually came out here to Utah. He sat down with us and said, "Hey man, the community is a difficult place. You know, the veteran firearms community, it's a difficult place. They don't teach you how to handle this stuff, and social media is coming up. And James was like, I'm here to help you guys because I want to see other guys from the community succeed. And and steadfastly, he has never asked for anything. He has never asked for, I mean, nothing. And he's always been there to help. And that's where, and I'll be the first to admit, I said this to James before. It's like, you're a madman. And we don't agree with everything. He's a madman. But you know what? He's probably without a doubt one of the most respected guys by me in the industry, because everything that's ever come out of your mouth, James, has been true, and I really appreciate that.
No problem. I wish that was the standard for the industry, but alas. So let's talk about tourniquets. Some of you guys might have questions about tourniquets. You might have heard some horrible stuff. We use them in our classes all the time, and there's no pulse at the end of the thing. And some of the people say, post on Facebook, well, ask him why people that use his tourniquets die. Well, number one, keep in mind, they've been shot. or a bomb's gone off or something like that. So trying to blame a tourniquet on somebody dying because a fucking bomb went off, it's kind of stretching it. They were fucked up before the tourniquet got there. Mm-hmm. But people die in car wrecks because they don't know how to drive a car. Everybody thinks they know how to drive a car, but most people don't know how to drive a car. So are we blaming Ford because you drove off the soft shoulder, overcorrected, spun the car out, went off a ditch on the other side? Are we suing Ford for that? Because that's your fault. And any product that is not used correctly won't work. There are a whole bunch of people in the firearms community that say don't even bother using your sights because you're not going to use them under stress. So you might as well just you learn how to point shoot. We know that's ridiculous. I don't know of a single complaint that I have heard about any tourniquet, especially the RATS tourniquet, that can't be traced back to operator error. Just like most every problem we hear about firearms. I've seen RATS tourniquets put on in training environments maybe thousands of times. If they were put on correctly, there was no distal pulse. If they weren't put on correctly, there was still a distal pulse.
Like any other piece of gear.
Right. That's my whole point. Like a car, like your gun, any other thing. Okay.
Well, and I think it's important for folks to understand like the history, like the story of the tourniquet itself. And so, and I'll preface this with, I have never disparaged another piece of equipment or anybody else's equipment ever in a public forum anywhere. You know, my personal opinions, I keep personal between me and my friends. You know, of course I have my favorites and all of that stuff. Anybody that's read about the AR platform, you know, the article that I just wrote about the AR platform, the AR-15 sucks for preppers. I didn't say for the military, the Marine Corps or something, but anyways.
You fucking pissing people off with that shit, Jeff. Holy fuck. I was just trying to, I can't protect you from the AR-15 guys. The tourniquet guys, I can hold them back for a while.
Well, yeah. So, you know, it was probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, we were hitting a target. So I was with the unit and with my unit, not the unit, with my unit. And we were hitting a target one night, right? And what we were doing was we would recruit these guys from the mountains and bring them in, and we'd run them through a condensed training cycle. And then we'd train during the day, and
we lost him. Okay, while we're waiting for him to come back, the question was...
Okay, I'm back.
Sorry. Please go ahead.
So we'd recruit these Afghans mostly out of the mountains, right? And some of these guys had PhDs. Some of these guys couldn't write their own name, and some of these guys, I'm not sure they had two brain cells to rub together. And so we had this huge disparity. You think about people that show up to basic training, right? Well, we had this huge disparity of like super intelligent guys all the way up to not right. So smart guys. So we were hitting this target one night, and bullets started coming through the gate. My two guys that were getting ready to assault this thing, they got gunshot wounds to the legs. We jumped up on the thing. We dragged them over into a ditch so that we could get them out of the line of fire. And my medics started going to work with these guys. And the tourniquet we were issued at the time, I saw my medics, and we trained a lot. So saying that is like, well, it was the Afghans. We trained a lot. And I saw them struggling. We wore gloves. We were night biased. We were working at night. We had NVGs on. And I saw these guys sitting and struggling with these tourniquets. And then later on, these same soldiers were trying to take the tourniquets off because they were inflicting so much pain from the horse bite that they were getting up in their crotch. And so a little while later, I rotated back to the States on my rotations. I'd go back and forth while I was with those guys for that 13 years. And I was in Arkansas, and I was training some PJs at the end of the pipeline. And as they were going through the house, it was a very high stress course. We were inducing casualties. It was simunitions.
I bet I can guess where you were.
It probably can. And they're just getting pelted with simunitions, and we were inducing casualties. And I remember sitting on the catwalk and looking down as these PJs at the height of their training were struggling with the very same tourniquet that my indige had been struggling with. And it was that moment I was like, oh my gosh.
Hold on a second, Jeff. For the uninitiated, please explain what a PJ is and why that was so surprising to you.
A PJ is an Air Force pararescueman. PJs are essentially, when you look at Tier 1 units, you've got Delta Force, you've got SEAL Team 6, and then you've got the 24th SDS, which is the Air Force Special Operations guys. So you've got Air Force guys that are teaming up. Well, guess who does a bunch of the med support for Delta and for the SEALs and for Special Forces guys? We get PJs that get attached to us. They're pararescuemen. They're very highly trained medics. And so these guys, so we've got these very highly trained guys that are going through this high stress course, nighttime, under stress, wearing gloves. I saw the same exact problems that my Afghans were having as what these young PJs were having. And that was that epiphanal moment for me. It was like, this isn't a training issue. This is a design issue. Now, and so I started thinking about it, and it was like, I'm a prepper survivalist, self-professed prepper survivalist, which means that I, by nature, question the status quo. I prepare because I don't believe the government's going to come save me. I prepare because I hold a healthy level of skepticism in what corporate America is saying or whatnot. And so, and probably most of the guys and gals that are listening right now fit in that same box. We prepare because we don't believe that the government is going to be there in case there's a shit hit the fan scenario that takes place. And so I started looking at different stuff. And one night I was watching TV and I was working on I had all these prototypes and all this garbage that was going on in my shop. And I was watching a TV show one night, and there was a little girl that was wrapping a rubber band around her finger, and her finger turned blue. And I had that moment where it was like, eureka. Why can't I make up the width of a tourniquet with circumferential wraps? What's wrong with that? Why can't I do that? And so the internet was so back then. We're talking, 15 years ago. And so I started looking, 10, 15 years ago. And so I started looking and studying and trying to find what I could on information. I found 2 surgeons that had been in World War II that advocated surgical tubing, multiple wraps as tourniquets. And one of the surgeons himself was very outspoken. He saw thousands of patients. He was very outspoken, saying we've got to start using surgical tubing and issuing it to the troops so that they can wrap these gunshot wounds and these shrapnel wounds of these soldiers so that we can keep them alive. So it was mixed with a little bit hit and miss reviews. But then I found another study about a week later where the Canadian military had conducted. Now, the modern tourniquets hadn't come out at this point. So CAT tourniquets, Softy, it wasn't available at this point. So we're talking, it was like 2004. The Canadian Army did a study, and they tested out a few different tourniquets that were available on the market. And the tourniquet that they found that performed the best, was the easiest to use, was the most economical, was surgical tubing wrapped multiple times, just like what this World War II doctor had pushed forward.
And let me give you guys kind of a timestamp. In the early 2000s, the bandage we had was still the Vietnam area bandage, a little piece of thing and
Mm-hmm.
some netting that was always rotten and stuff like that. So, you guys that are thinking in modern terms, like it was really no advancements basically from World War II until the War on Terror started, right, Jeff?
Yeah. Almost no. And that's where it's like, and people hold truths. I question truths, right? I'm here I'm a doubter. I'm a skeptic. I'm by nature, right? That's why I'm a prepper and a survivalist. That's why I train. That's why I keep food, emergency supplies and stuff. And so for me, you know, I look back, I started my medical trauma training. So it's always funny to me. People are like, you don't know what you're talking about. I was an EMT before any of these guys were probably born. Not any of them. Not you, James, certainly, but we're the same age.
Hey,
But I was, I went through EMT training, like formal EMT training when I was in high school. And then through special operations, when my time that I was there, guess what? They sent me to oodles of schools and stuff like that. What that means is I saw training, what was the accepted protocol for medical trauma, for trauma treatment, do a complete backflip. And what I mean by that was when I started trauma training back in the 80s and in the early 90s, if you had somebody that was on the battlefield, you gave them 2 large bore IVs and you'd bolus the bags, which is a fancy way of saying you'd squeeze the bags so you could put as much fluid into that guy as possible because he was wounded. Then SOCOM did a study and they said, oh my gosh, we're killing people by doing that. But remember, that was the accepted medical, that was the truth, that was the science that was put out. Even though that fluid, they were like, no, we've got to keep the heart rate up. And then they came back and they go, no, you don't want to keep the heart rate up. You want it to drop so that you're not blowing clots.
right.
And then guess what? At the same time they were saying use 2 large bore IVs, bolus the bags, they also were saying don't use tourniquets.
Yep.
Don't use them unless that limb is blown off. Try to pack that thing, and then and only then, if you can't do that, then you can use a tourniquet. Guess what? The war kicked off. Go ahead.
No, so let me explain to you guys. So you're putting these fluids in, and you think, oh, the body needs fluids. All you're doing is turning your blood into Kool-Aid because there's no hemoglobin in an IV bag, and so you're doing a disservice by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's where it's like in the early days, like in the 90s Army, when I was, on up at first group and stuff, it was like IV training, IV. And when you got good at IVs, then you do IVs at night. And then when you got good at IVs at night, then you do IVs with NVGs on. And then when you got good at IVs at night, then you do IVs in the back of trucks where we're driving down bumpy roads. And we spent all of this time, which is money and effort, learning IVs. Nobody teaches IVs. I mean, other than for medications for your advanced medics. I'm not talking medication. I'm talking fluid resuscitation.
Give him just a second.
So you got me back. And so, and then guess what happened? 9/11 happened. We're in war, and it took the Army about 1 month to go, you guys have got to start using friggin' tourniquets again. Oh my gosh. These guys, they had guys that were getting blown up. They were making it. This is a really interesting point. They were making it all the way back to Landstuhl, Germany, and still dying because there wasn't enough blood in the system to remove the toxins, which is a little bit of an advanced medical stuff. And so they said, you've got to bring tourniquets back. And then fast forward, the military did a study. We all know this. Military did a study, 10-year study of tourniquet use. 0 instance of amputation or problems from using tourniquets.
And let me jump in right there. So the thing about, they'll lose their leg. I'm going to explain this to the only way I know, in a very basic way. So that little blue pill that makes you have the erection for 4 hours, and they say if it lasts longer than 4 hours, call your doctor, and you're like, I'm going to fucking call everybody. Well, that's a biological tourniquet. And the reason 4 hours is the mark is because that limb will begin building up toxins. It'll begin rotting, basically. And if you take the tourniquet off, then those things can flow through your body, cause infections and things like that. So that's a very basic thing. And so that 4 hour mark is this kind of magical mark. And most of the time, we're going to be within 4 hours of a care provider. But even if we weren't, it's life over limb. You choose to save a person, and then lose that limb, then them die and lose everything. Sorry, Jeff.
And there's a study that came out. There was a pilot. He's a helicopter pilot. He had a tourniquet on for 8 hours, and he was back flying helicopters with no problem. He didn't lose the limb. And so, I mean, obviously that's a little bit of the extreme, but still, that is a case study of where tourniquets have been left in place. Usually, what they say 1 to 2 hours, and then you need to start worrying about it. But obviously, if you've blown the artery and you're out in the mountains, you're not going to get in that guy's leg and sew that artery back together. I mean, so
Okay.
walk faster.
So something that keeps coming up, and I'd like to give you a chance to talk about it, is they say that you're shady in your description of how it was approved or not approved or something like that. What would you
So
say?
that's a great that's come up a few times, and that actually kind of ties into where how we got to where we're at now, right? With all of the Jeff Kirkham bashing and stuff that's been going on. So the TCCC thing. So here's what happened. At the time, the Committee on TCCC had zero interest in getting involved with civilian stuff. A very well-known medic that I know went to the committee and said, "Hey, there's a whole bunch of fat dudes that the closest thing to stress that they've run into is playing video games in their basement that are teaching TCCC that they were then sending guys downrange for the WHIPS program with Blackwater." You know exactly what I'm talking about, James. And so these guys had zero. They'd never been in the military. They'd never been a cop, and they're teaching a variety of different truths that they were pushing these guys out. So essentially, this guy that I'd met had found this and said, "This is ridiculous. We can't do this. We have to institute some type of standard." And so we went to the committee. They said, "We're not interested. We're only interested in the military." And he said, "Well, I am interested." So he applied for the copyright for TCCC so that he could implement some type of standard. Well, about that time, I was introduced to him from a mutual friend. And I said, "Hey, I have this tourniquet." At that time, there were no entities that were looking at tourniquets. Like outside of the military, nobody was looking at tourniquets. At that time, just like James, and I was just talking to Paul about this, Paul Markle, where he was like, "Man, I was vilified because I was telling people to use tourniquets in a civilian tactical setting." Well, here's a guy, he's got the copyright, he's got the credentials. Because I saw, we knew mutual people from overseas from a mutual office. And it was like, okay, he's like, "I've got this. I'm doing this to implement some type of standard." And so for me, it was like, okay, there's nobody else that can serve. I need somebody else outside of Jeff to say that this thing works. And so I said, okay, let's do this. And so they tested it and evaluated it and said, "Yeah, this thing works great. You can use our copyright." So I was following U.S. Patent and Trademark Office law. And then, it didn't take very long and people were like, "Hey, that's shady. You're confusing people." I took a step back and I was like, "Yeah, I can see how that could be confusing to people." We took that label off. In our records show there were like a few hundred of those tourniquets, less than 1,000 of those tourniquets that went out.
I don't
So it was very
understand the
few.
shady part. If you're using it with permission from the copyrighted source, I don't understand the shady part.
Well, I think their contention is you were confusing people because people were looking at it thinking that it was from the committee from TCCC, not the copyrighted guys from TCCC. And so that was for me. I had already spoken to some mill guys, and they were like, "Look, dude, the military, for all intents and purposes, has figured out the tourniquet issue for the military. For them to buy a new tourniquet and retrain the entire force is going to cost millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars." And they're like, "You're not going to get in." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to push forward on the domestic side because I'm a big believer in if you carry a gun, you better have a way that you can help other people or help yourself as well. You start punching holes, you better be able to plug holes or at least stop that bleeding." And so, and actually, maybe I'll blame you a little bit for this, James. You were like, "Yeah, this is great. We're teaching this." And so I saw guys like you that were in the tactical industry, firearms industry, and Markle, and I was like, "Okay, we're pushing this out domestically." So I can see how it could cause confusion. But once I realized that, it was like, okay, We took it off. We removed
Yeah,
it
but it
off of the
wasn't
label,
a
and it hasn't been
lie.
on there for years.
You were using it with permission from a copyrighted source. That's not a
Yes, sir.
lie, and it's not shady. Confusing maybe, and you took it off. I
Yes.
don't.
Yep.
I don't understand the anger
Yeah,
that
and
people
I
have.
I'd be like, yeah, I made a mistake. I was causing confusion in the market. Sorry.
I,
As
no, I don't
as
think
soon
you
as I
made a
figured it out,
mistake.
I removed it.
I don't even think you made a mistake. I personally wouldn't have taken it off if I had permission from the copyrighted source. I'd have fucking left it on. If they don't want to educate themselves, that's their fucking problem. It's not. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. I'm not speaking for you.
Well, we'll just get better about education here in a minute.
Okay. Have I missed it? Any big questions? Is there something that you guys have asked that you think is very important that we've over?
Well, we can, and I'm sure that there's a bunch of guys that are wondering or suspect what the row is that's going on right now with me and with my tourniquet with Rat's tourniquet. So
Okay.
here's the story. And so, Rat's tourniquet, because it's so, I mean, it's different than everything else that's out there, right? Unless you think surgical tubing, which is, the inspiration for this. So the inspiration was for me was surgical tubing and a boat cleat. That's it. It took me a while to figure it out, but surgical tubing and a boat cleat. And so I was trying to figure out, how can I improve on surgical tubing? How can I make it so that it's easier to start? How can I make it so that I can tie this thing off when I'm done? And how do I get a material that's more robust than surgical tubing? And I found it. I figured it out. I figured out, the simple trucker's hitch, putting the running in through the loop. So I have a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage. I've got the strength of the elastic compressing the material. So even if the limb relaxes because of the patient going unconscious or pain meds coming on, it continues to squeeze where it won't have the rebleed. And then it's the simple boat cleat. This thing's been proven for like 2,000 years that it's secure. And so the row started as soon as this thing came out. Immediately there were haters that started coming out of the woodwork. And that's fine. It's an out of the box solution. I get it. And not everybody's ready to move that way. That's fine. That's great. So that, every once in a while or so often I'd get these guys that would come on and start bashing my tourniquet. And I was like, whatever, if you don't like my tourniquet, just use something else. Use the standard, use whatever. I don't care. I've always said the main thing is have a tourniquet with you. There are lots of great tourniquets out there. Do your own research and have a tourniquet. Whatever that is that works for you, have a tourniquet. I even had the Stop the Bleed call me, the actual office call me and ask me for support. And I was like, yeah, do you need me to send tourniquets? And they were like, well, we don't use your tourniquet. We use North American's tourniquet. And I was like, and the guy kind of felt dumb after he said that. And I was like, hey man, all I care about is we're spreading the word. I will support your program even though you don't want to use my tourniquet. That's fine. But I'll support your program absolutely with the Stop the Bleed. So I got these haters, and this all changed probably about 4 weeks ago. And this is where, I'll admit, I got mad. I got mad because the attacks were no longer against an inanimate object. The attacks were against me.
Right.
And so the attacks became very personal. And the attacks were the most
Let me stop you.
profane.
This probably ties in. So the question is, what about the domain squatting? I think this is about the same time here.
I'll get to that, but that's coming up. The attacks against me were unbelievably profane. They were personal attacks against me, my friends, and my family. And it was profanity that would have made a sailor blush. And I was shocked. And it's all of these people that are hiding behind anonymous names. And so having been where I've been, it was like, oh, okay, you're anonymous. That's cool. So it took me like 2 hours to find a few of these people. And James, I got to tell you, I was flabbergasted because at least two of them that I found are in the medical profession. One of them is a surgeon with an impressive background. She has an impressive background. And it was the most foul-mouthed. I could not connect the dots where it's like, how is this foul-mouthed person that's hitting people, not with sexual innuendos, but straight up like you need to get that guy's member out of your mouth. and attacking people about me with my tourniquets with that. And that's where it's like, you know what? I got mad and I was like, okay, you know what? I got a programmer that works for me. Hey, man. And so I looked up all of their pseudonyms that they had and I go, hey, are those URLs available? And he was like, yeah, they are. And I was like, buy them. And then what I did, and then also a couple of years ago, NorthAmericanRescue.com and CatTourniquet.com randomly were available. And so I bought them. They were available, and so I bought them. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do with these things. Probably nothing. I even reached out in the past to North American Rescue and offered to, I was like, hey, you guys, I bought your domains. Do you want to buy them back? Yeah, just pay me what I paid for them. Get it. Nothing. Didn't hear anything back. And then, fast forward. So I'm getting these attacks. I got mad. So it was like, yeah. So everybody's saying that I did a smear campaign on North American Rescue and the Cat Tourniquet. No. North American Rescue is probably worth $100 million. And that's not an exaggeration. They were just purchased by a huge investment firm. North American Rescue is a 500-pound gorilla. Rat's Tourniquet is like 5 guys that are putting these things together and pushing them. And 2 of them are like part-time. Like literally, we're like 5 guys that are doing this stuff, and like a middle-aged lady that puts them in a box and ships them out for us. So it's like, if you look at it reasonably, what am I possibly going to hope to do against North American Rescue? So I built this site. My programmer built this site where I found a bunch of open source studies that showed flaws on the Cat Tourniquet. I did that because all of these guys that were bashing my tourniquet and bashing me, I wanted to show them your sacred cow has the same issues going on with it. It's not perfect. There is nothing perfect. Remember, I'm a prepper, a skeptic at heart. There's nothing perfect. And so I posted this, and then my programmer at the time said, do you want to hide your name from this? And I was like, no, I'm not going to hide my name from this because I'm going to say, hey, if people want to know where this is coming from, it's me. I was throwing down the gauntlet so that we could engage in gentlemanly debate. That's what I wanted. Here's the studies. You want to argue.
The thing. Let me talk. Evidence. So they Pearl Harbored you, and you Hiroshima and Nagasaki them, and they're fucking trying to say you didn't play fair. Listen, I got no problem with that. As we talked, I've got some experience getting beat up on the internet by a bunch of fucking faceless losers that have never deployed, sitting in their fucking mom's basement eating a bag of Cheetos with a fucking orange dick. They'll hide behind the fucking internet and cast their fucking insults. And if I would have been smart enough to think of that shit, I'd have fucking done it myself.
And again, yeah, thanks. But I mean, again, I'll tell you what, I've been so disappointed in our community because our country was built off of gentlemanly debate. The founding fathers put together that inspired document called the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution because they debated in a gentleman manner where they spoke to each other and they figured it out. And that's why that document is so strong and has withstood the test of time for hundreds of years at this point. And so I was like, okay, you guys want to argue? Shift the focus off of Jeff because your personal attacks are completely unacceptable. Let's argue the data. And then we can argue the methodology of the way that the data was put together. That's the Socratic method.
Let me jump in here. And for you folks that live a relatively, mild life, when people attack me and they attack my business and they put viruses on us and put us on all kinds of junk mail lists, they personally insult my grandchildren and talk about sexually abusing my grandchildren and things like that. And if they want to play on it, listen, I guarantee you, if they said, Jeff, meet me out in the parking lot, fucking Jeff would walk out in the parking lot just like I would, but they won't. They cast their jabs over the internet. So if you want to fight on the internet, fight with motherfuckers that don't fight back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Again, I'm speaking for me, not Jeff.
And it's true. It's like you're attacking me personally, or attacking my family, or attacking my friends. It's like, Where have we seen that in history? That's so unbelievably un-American, because there's not one person
Well,
listening right now that if they were pushed half as far as I was pushed, they wouldn't have lashed out in
right.
probably in a worse way than I did. I was
Now,
actually
listen,
unbelievably restrained
sorry. John Hancock signed his name big because he wanted motherfuckers to know who he was.
because
That's
he
what you
wanted
did.
people.
That's what you did. You signed your name all over that shit.
And I'm playing, and so I was playing good. Did I point Cat Tourniquet and NorthAmericanRescue.com towards evidence-based-medicine.com that has those studies? Yeah, I did, because I wanted people to see those studies, to read those studies. And then later on, I was
So
like,
you
all
didn't
right,
point them
I
towards
can
Rat
see how
Tourniquet. You pointed them
no,
towards documentation of other tourniquets.
of their tourniquet, which also
Yeah,
includes several other
but not your
tourniquets in those
product. You
studies.
didn't.
Correct. There
So
is nowhere on that site that has my name, has Ready Man, has Rats Turn, nowhere on there except for in one or two of the studies. But I didn't write that. And
yep,
so that's the thing. And I've heard like where people, here's the sad thing, because people are saying that I made all those studies up, that it's fake news, and that I fabricated
that's
all
not
of these
true.
studies. And if you go there and it's like the whole study is there, and they're saying I cherry picked information. The whole study's there, guys. There's a paragraph on there that says conclusion. Oh, okay, that's the conclusion. It's synopsis. And so basically what's in the study. But that's where I'm like, go in, read the study. That's what America is built on, is debate. Argue the study, argue the evidence, argue the data, argue the methodology, but don't do personal attacks. That's
Well, I
ridiculous. It
mean,
brings the
I'm
entire
not.
community down.
I'm not saying we have to use Robinson Rules of Order, but if you want to have an intelligent conversation, it has to be. I don't know. There's a quote by the guy that wrote Conan the Barbarian. He said, "Gentlemen are often far more discourteous than savages, because a savage knows he can get his skull split."
Yes. Yep. 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 There you go. And so, and essentially that is the story in the nutshell. And then I redirected. NorthAmericanRescue.com points to North American right now, and CatTourniquet.com points to NorthAmericanRescue.com. And it's like, okay, you guys, I think, and this whole thing blew up and turned into this vitriol hatred that I would argue, like,
Jeff,
it
time
pulls the
out.
whole community down.
Jeff, time out. Okay, if you are watching this, check this out. Whatever dollars worth you spend on Rats tourniquets or any of the accessories on the Rats Tourniquet website between now and April 1st, whatever money you spend, I will give you off a class at Tactical Response. You just email your receipt to info@tacticalresponse.com, and I will give you a credit for that amount. However many, if you buy 550 of them dollars worth, I'll give you a class.
Man, you don't have to do that, man.
Oh,
You
I
don't
know.
have to do that, James.
No, I know.
You're such a good American, man.
Fuck
And
these
that's what I'm
people.
talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Like the community, I tell you, I cherish and I hold dear what you said to me in those early days when I was a budding new businessman. When Evan and I were sitting there talking to you, and you said the community needs to build each other up. Don't they hold off for these big corporations, and we eat each other up, and you were like, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. We've got to help each other out. And I have carried that flag down the field. I think I've done an okay job with it, but this is, at no point in time should a debate be won by graphic art. At no point. That's propaganda. That's a poster on a wall in Lenin and
Yeah.
Stalin's Russia. At no point should you be able to win an argument or a debate or even influence people with a bunch of colored cartoons that are disparaging people or their products. And it's not just me, like the entire community. If we got together and actually helped each other out, man, we'd be a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
But we're so busy dragging each other down.
Yep. So, guys, I know we've asked a couple of the hard questions that I have seen. Have there been any other questions that I have missed that I have not? Jeff can't see the feed. He doesn't know what's going on. So, has there been a question that you asked or that somebody asked that you want to know the answer to? It's ratsmedical.com. Thank you, Crystal Fox. So,
And I'll let you look.
Aaron Hollins, like, man, Jeff's a real motherfucker, man. Like, he's very modest, and he hasn't even scratched the surface on what he has done for this country. But I'm telling you,
What was his question, James?
All you guys, all our alumni, our friends would definitely like this guy. Matter of fact, Jeff, I know you teach classes on stuff. Why don't we do something and you come out here and do like a 2-day class sometime and let these guys get to know you?
That'd be awesome.
Let's
put it together.
We'll talk about
put it together.
Yeah, we'll talk about what can do, because I got a bunch of good people. And
yeah,
I've wanted to train with you anyway, so this is just my selfishness.
No, let's put it together. It's way overdue. It really is. And I think, and you're one of those few people, like, Zach will come in and he's like, I don't know what it is, man. You never laugh, but you and James get together and you laugh. You're like a little kid. It's like, and it's true. And it's like, I don't know. It's like kindred spirits or something like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's, we have differing opinions about stuff, but again, it's like, but that's what made America great, is we can have differing opinions. We can be this melting pot of ideas that pushes innovation and evolution forward without, guys, trying to string each other up on crosses.
Talking to Jeff about Rats Tourniquets, and I mean from way back, he has never said this one doesn't work, or that brand doesn't work, or that brand doesn't work. He has never said that to me.
Yeah, and I never. There's lots of great tourniquets. I reach out. I'm helping 3 other tourniquet companies right now, and I'm like, hey man, how can I help you? I'm getting beat up right now, so maybe you don't want to associate with me, but how can I help you? I mean, in evidence-based-medicine.com, so that's the infamous site that's got the sites on it. I am going to build that out so that it's a library for all tourniquets, so that people can go there, read the studies, educate themselves, and then they can decide what's best for them and their family. And there won't be any buy anything, or maybe I'll put links for every different tourniquet below, and people go through there and read the studies and then go to Amazon and buy those tourniquets, because tourniquets save lives.
Rob Morrison, yes, rats are superior on people with little limbs. That means children or malnourished people in other countries, and animals. Jeff, your response: kids and dogs.
Kids and dogs. I would argue. Yeah, we're the preferred tourniquet for small limbs. I would argue that we're the preferred tourniquet for small limbs like dogs and for kids. And then I would argue we're the preferred tourniquet when you're scared in the dark. And that's why it's a loop. That's why this is a 3-finger loop, because you can find that in the dark. You can find that when you're scared. Do you need training with this thing? Yeah, certainly. Like anything else, you need training. That's why this boat cleat, how many times people have asked me to turn this thing black, tan, or whatever color, and I won't do it, because this is part of this thing's heritage. Yeah. So it will glint in the moonlight. So I have contrast, so I can see it, so that I can make this thing effective. And so,
and something else that you understand fundamentally, Jeff, when you're working with people in other countries that might not have a formal education, when I can take this thing and do this and they can see that's it, when you have to explain more complicated tasks, sometimes if it goes past 2 or 3 steps, you start losing folks.
You lose them. Well, we had guys on the initial testing. So I was testing this with our commandos over in Afghanistan, and I was like, okay, can these guys do this in the dark? Because, we used to have like a half an hour class where we teach them the other tourniquets that were out there. And then we'd try to do it, and we'd walk around. All we had was a pulse ox, and we'd stick it on the guy's toes or on the finger. And it's like, did you cut off the oxygen? Did you cut off the blood flow? Did you, it's close enough. We're good enough. And so we ended up, and like had a super hard time with these guys doing it in the dark. We give these guys like a 5-minute class. We turn out the lights, say, put it on yourself. You got 30 seconds. They put it on themselves. We come back around. We'd have 90+% that would pass. We go, okay, we're going to turn the lights back off, put it on your buddy's leg. And so we'd turn off the lights, boom, they put it on the leg. We'd have 90% of them would pass it. It was just like you said, it's like, I'll be the first one to say this. It is stupid simple. This thing is stupid simple. And it was designed that way because when you're scared in the dark, guess what? Things get really difficult. And so this is my new and improved surgical tubing and boat cleat. That's it.
One other thing that I've seen people complain about is they say it's too narrow. If you put it on incorrectly, it is too narrow. Jeff?
Yeah, so some of the folks that are out there that say, hey, it's so narrow, it's going to cause neuro damage. It's not true. The evidence doesn't support that. There's no study that's out there that supports that. And on the contrary, on that same site, I have 20 different studies of an orthopedic tourniquet that's been used on over 1 million patients. That tourniquet is round. It's about as big around as my finger. It's made out of elastic silicone. And orthopedic surgeons use it. They exsanguinate the limb. They push all the blood out, and then they cut off the blood flow. So if they're repairing your knee or replacing your knee or your elbow or doing carpal tunnel, they've got to push all the blood out, and then they don't let the blood in. This tourniquet that they have is this small, narrow diameter tourniquet. Over 1 million patients, 0 instance of neuro damage. And actually, if you look at the physics of what's going on, and when I was doing this, I looked at this problem. This is not a medical problem. This is an engineering problem. How do I compress a limb? And then I look at, okay, does that work on the medical side? And so if you look at the way these guys were doing this, it's genius. Because if you look at the physics of what's going on, the pressure is the pressure to shut down an artery. The pressure is the pressure to shut down the artery. Their tourniquet proves that. So if their evidence, their data suggests that now if you have a wider tourniquet, you're actually putting that same amount of pressure over a longer breadth of the nerve itself versus one that's narrow, it's on less of a pinch point on the nerve. So consequently, if you look at the physics of it, you're potentially doing less damage. But either way, they've used their tourniquet on over 1 million patients with 0 instance of any problems. So I would say the proof is in the pudding. It works. It's great, and it doesn't cause damage.
Fuck.
I mean,
so for you guys,
every
carrying them, if you go over to the Rat's website, they've got some Kydex carriers. You can wear one on your belt. They've got like a sleeve that goes over your belt, and they'll slide in. On my tactical rigs, I run them through the channels on my tactical rigs, and I can just pull them right out. They're on all my tack rigs. They're in my truck because I got grandkids everywhere. How else do they carry them, Jeff, besides the Kydex and the belt sleeve?
You know what? I'm constantly amazed at how guys are doing it. They'll run it through their belt loops, and then they catch the cleat on the end. A lot of the police officers here just drop them down their pant leg, so the cleat is sticking out on the top of their pants, and then it just runs down their leg, and they'll tuck it in their socks so it's not dragging on the ground. If you have an old cuff case, we tell a lot of police officers, because some police departments are really anal about what they'll allow on their belts. I'm like, hey, just get a cuff case, roll, cinnamon roll that thing up and stick it in the cuff case, and you'll be good. You don't need to necessarily buy a case from us. So a lot of different options.
They're saying the Kydex is sold out. I don't know when they might be back.
It is. It is. I mean, as soon as we get those things in, they're back out. We're working on the logistics chain of that right now, but they are sold out. We just blew through.
Logistics chain is nsrtactical.com. Have my boy Dave Black over there start making them for you, dude. Trust me.
Send me his info.
Done.
Send me his info.
See, that's how this shit works, guys. Let's see.
Yeah, imagine that. Help each other out. It's like, oh, he's a good dude. All right, yeah. I gotta tell you, James. Like,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Nah, I was just gonna say, it's like, you guys that are you guys that are out there that are listening and stuff, don't listen to the mob. Don't listen to the and if half those guys if half those guys were sitting here right now, it'd take me about 2 minutes and I'd be like, hey man, I get it. I mean, it's mob mentality. You went after me, whatever. It's water over the bridge. It's bygones, but let's from here on out, let's support the community. Let's uplift other veterans and other emergency workers and other guys that were in the war and other law enforcement entities so that we're not, because this bashing of each other it discredits the entire community. It does.
Absolutely. What else do you guys got? Jeff, what else do you got?
I think that's it. Any of the questions that these guys have, feel free, blast them over to me. More than happy to answer them. I'll be the first to admit, I ban the haters. It's just like, if you don't like my product, that's fine. Ban. I don't need to. I get enough drama in my life. James has heard me say this before, is like, when Jeff writes a book on business, it's going to be Jeff's book on business. You're going to open it up and it's going to say, don't get involved in drama. Then it'll be the next page. Drama will kill your business. Then it'll be the next page and it'll say, the end. That's it. Stay out of drama. So it's like, am I banning people? James, you should have seen all these guys. Yeah, of course I'd go and look and see what they're saying about me in some of these, in some of these groups, and they were tagging me all these times where like, come in here and play, come in here. And I was like, you guys, I don't have time for that. I'm too busy running some other businesses.
Your haters are like little Johnny Appleseeds all over the fucking internet saying, Jeff Kirkham rats, Jeff Kirkham rats, Jeff Kirkham rats, Jeff Kirkham rats, rats, Jeff Kirkham rats, all over the fucking place, man. You can't pay for that kind of fucking advertising.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you know what the saddest part of all of this, personal attacks and all of that aside, I threw down the gauntlet for gentleman debate. And at the height of all of this, you know how many people had actually gone to the site? 70. 70 people. Care. And you know what the average time of the person on the site was?
2 minutes.
15 seconds.
Oh.
15 seconds. 15 seconds. And now we're like, yeah.
Sorry. Difference between Gen 1 and Gen 2. I think it's longer.
It's a little bit longer. Yeah. So we were at first we were sewing them, and then we went back to the crimp, and then we went back to sewing them because it's a superior way. It's a little bit longer, and then that's essentially it. And it actually makes it easier to work with because you get a little bit more that you can get in your hand, so that when you start tightening that thing down on your leg or your arm, that's it.
Cool.
And we are coming out with one that's made out of a different material. So if there's some issues there, but at this point, and also I will say, like, these are all made right here in Utah. We actually just brought in the braiding machines, and so we're actually doing a video right now. These are made in America, man. Made in America by veterans and great Americans that are cranking these things out.
Nice. Okay. What's up, White Dragon? Jared Rice, the Gen 2's not just for fat dudes. And he's a fat dude, so he can say that. What is the benefit of the rat over other tourniquets? And I think we talked about the kids and dogs and what else?
I think it's personal preference. Preference. And this is like when I teach my classes about tourniquets, I go through and I teach all of the tourniquets, or I try to buy up as many tourniquets as I can that are out on the market, so that I teach all of them, because a responsible instructor will teach everything, and because you never know what you're going to run into. And so that's the first thing, because there's tens of thousands of these things out on the market. And so saying that you're not going to teach it because you don't like me, because you think I'm a bad person, is irresponsible. And then the second thing is,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
And I was going to say, and the second thing is, the more you use tourniquets, the more you see the different varieties that are out there, you gain that understanding, so that then if you don't have a tourniquet, you can impromptu make a hasty field expedient tourniquet.
No, absolutely. George Park said, GFT, George, people might not know what that means. Green Force Tactical also makes a RATS tourniquet holder. That's another one of our alumni.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll have to check them out. Send me his info too, would you, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just making sure we're not missing anything. Because I don't want them to say, you didn't answer my question. It was so perfect and you're a
Please.
liar and all that shit.
I mean, I'm a pretty reasonable guy.
Well, I think so. So where can they find you on YouTube? Are you Ready Man on YouTube?
Yeah, we're Ready Man on YouTube, and then we're Ready Man Network on Facebook. And then we've got the Ready Men closed group that is exploding at this point. There's so much great sharing of knowledge between we've got a ton of subject matter experts in there that are sharing the information back and forth. We don't allow politics or religion in there. It's all, we're doing prepper survival, emergency preparedness. We get guns in there and stuff like that too. So that's exploding. But Ready Man Network is our Facebook, and then Ready Man on YouTube.
Okay. Well, so Jeff, hey, I had an hourglass timer. This became kind of famous on here, and the other day I fucking broke it. And so it's like everybody's like, "Oh, we're getting away with murder now." And I bought another one, and it was a more fancy one. And when it came in today, it was fucking broken when it got here. So I'm strike two on the damn.
That's the gods saying that we need to go. We need to talk as long as we need to.
No, man, I'm not trying to shut it off at all. I just want to make sure that
I want to hear the questions. I mean,
I've been asking.
There is a sensible, reasonable answer for everything that has taken place, except for on my side.
Chris Suck says, "Does Jeff offer training in Utah?" You can find out about any of that stuff on Ready Man.
Yep, go to readyman.com. Check us out.
And SOE makes a tourniquet pouch that'll fit on a sling. Guess what'll fit in there? Rat tourniquet.
There you go. That's awesome.
That's something else you might want to sell, is that sling pouch. He sells your tourniquets. You might want to sell his pouch.
Yeah, send me his info. See how that works?
Okay, so guys, I want to make sure that we get all the hard questions. So is there one that we missed? Even if it wasn't yours, did you see another question, like something that, like, whoa, what about this or something? Was there one that we...
or hit me with a what
about getting your tourniquet approved for the military, and I think you kind of talked about that.
That's a great question. So the committee on TCCC haven't really looked at, they haven't gone through recommendations for tourniquets since 2005 is when the last ISR study was done. And so there is a rumor that they're getting ready to do another one. I have spoken to and heard from a couple of people that were on the committee or are on the committee that are worried because they're like, look, the committee was never intended to do what it's kind of turned into do. It was just recommendations on stuff. And there's a big push right now in the community to remove any name whatsoever off of any of their products that are on there, because it's turned into this, if it's got to be TCCC or nothing. But now they're getting pushback from the civilian side because TCCC is designed, the committee on TCCC makes recommendations for military who are young, fit men and women, not necessarily kids or whatever. Yes, there's tons of crossover there. Absolutely, there's tons of crossover there. Yes, the committee has done a fantastic job of saving lives, but they've also unintentionally made a monopoly. And I'm quoting Kyle Sims there, who was on the committee and helped write the outline of their stuff that exists now. So, so to answer that question, there are rumors that it's coming up. I don't know, after this row, then, they'll probably throw it out. Too controversial, not interested.
So to answer the question directly, he doesn't get a choice in it. They have to accept application, so to speak, and he would submit it. But it's not like he has neglected to submit it to them.
And part B to that, though, is the tourniquet has been tested by Fort Sam. There is a study that's out there, and it's the one that I will argue the other side cherry picks the information. where it was tested against the rat, the soft T, and the cat tourniquet at Fort Sam Houston. Fort Sam Houston is the center of the universe when we start talking about actual testing of tourniquets. It's not the committee. The testing is done by Colonel Cray and his crew down at Fort Sam Houston. It was tested, and it came back, and they said, yes, all tourniquets performed about the same. The cat was a little bit faster than the rat tourniquet. Therefore, there was a little bit more blood loss. It was on there. So the word is the rat tourniquet was inferior in performance to the cat tourniquet. And so there was more blood loss that took place. Now, with that being said, keep in mind that these were soldiers that were the testers that were putting on a mannequin leg. These soldiers, I mean, they're soldiers. They'd used the cat tourniquet about a bazillion times. They literally had just gotten my tourniquet in their hands and they were putting on there. And I know that for a fact because I spoke to the guys at Fort Sam that did the testing. And so it was like, hey, that's a win. That's great. Performed just as well as these other two.
That segues into the next question. What about the rumor that a rats doesn't work on a leg? So I think you just answered it.
That's absolutely untrue. And I've done 3 live videos now that prove that. I have 26-inch thighs. You know, I'm a decent sized guy. You know, I go in there and hit the squat rack, and I can shut down mid thigh on my leg. I can do total arterial occlusion, confirmed with a Doppler. I've done videos
Jeff,
on it.
He's like the Thing off the Fantastic Four. That's what that's his shape.
Yes, I'm a fire plug. Yeah, and it will shut down the blood flow in my leg. I don't have it. It works. As a matter of fact, there was just primary and secondary responders just did a video, and one of their guests that was on there, they did this like 3 days ago, was Andrew Fisher. Andrew Fisher, he's a PA. I think he's going to medical school right now. He's he was in Ranger Battalion as a PA. And he was just on a video, and he says on the video, he's like, he's holding my tourniquet. They're talking about tourniquets because we're in like tourniquet war 3 now, I guess. And he was like, look, I argue with people all the time that the rat tourniquet works. He's like, it does work. And he's like, now I have concerns about the narrowness on it, and I have some concerns about the repeatability, on this stuff. But he's like, I argue it. He's like, it works. It works. I mean, and that's Andrew Fisher, Church of Evidence-Based Medicine and St. Fisher. Go to primary secondaries and watch their video. I think it's episode like 188. They just did it, that it's up there. And it's like, there's the guy. So these guys and gals that are out there saying that the rats doesn't work. It's not true. I've got studies. I've got testimonies. It's just not true. It's a red herring. It's a straw man argument. Well,
that's pretty much it. Let's see. So Tony Kaiser says John Lovell did a video with Green Beret Doc T on the rats. And do you know John? He's a wingman.
I've met John from.
He's this tall. He's like
he's that tall.
Like a leprechaun.
Former Ranger, and Doc T is Travis Hall. You should have Travis come out to your place. Travis and I were in the CT unit together. And he's a great guy. He's an 18 Delta. He actually was wounded in combat. Got his arm filleted open, and he's a great American. He's out there. Unbelievable depth of knowledge on that guy as well. Very tactically and technically proficient. And so can't say enough. He runs Second Chance Med. And so, I mean, you should have him out of your place, James, if for nothing else to drink beers, because he's a great guy.
I saw him on that video. He's definitely knowledgeable, and Lovell's a good dude. I mean, I guess I know him better than you. He's a good guy. He's a silly little man, but he's a good guy.
I've only met him. I think I've met him once or twice, and so as you know, James, I've been dropped on my head a couple of times, so I forget.
It's all right. Zach, yes, we've already talked about that. You can go back and watch that. Let's see.
What's the question?
Compartmental syndrome. Let's see.
Actually, we did not talk about compartment syndrome that's on there. No, we hadn't talked about compartment syndrome. And here's the reality. Compartment syndrome can potentially come up with any tourniquet use. Yeah. And so, and it's you avoid that. Does it reliably shut down arterial blood flow? Now they'll say, what if there's skin sticking up between the loops? If I don't get this exactly touching each other, never had an instance of that. No evidence of that whatsoever. You could make the same argument between some of the other tourniquets where the pinching effect takes place. There's no, underneath the buckles or the base plates that are on there, there's no evidence of that taking place. At least I haven't seen the studies. If you've had the studies, go to evidencebasedmedicine.com, jump on there, submit the study. I'd love to see it because I'll put it up on the site.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Jeff, give you a minute to kind of think if there's any other topics you want to address before we leave. And I'm just kind of making sure that we're not leaving any, rat stuff on the table here.
Yeah, I mean, I just, probably a final thought that I'd like to say, unless there's another good question that comes up, is, hey, gents and ladies that are out there, this is discourse, this is debate, and we argue the data. Read the data, go through there and find it yourself. Don't be a follower. Ask the questions. Do your own studying. All you people are intelligent, educated people that are out there. Read the studies and think. And then if you don't like what you're reading, argue the data, argue the methodology. But every time that we do these bashing campaigns, I'm not the first. I won't be the last, unfortunately. James has gone through it and several other people. Every time we bash like this, you know what happens? We stifle innovation. And when we stifle innovation, we all lose. We all suffer for that. We either suffer in combat or we suffer in our day-to-day lives. And the reality is we show and we have this appearance to the outside world that we look like just a bunch of knuckle draggers. And that is not the impression that we want out there with us, or else we will not be taken serious. And this all goes back to protecting our rights as Americans, whether that's guns, whether that's freedom of speech, whether that's like James, you getting kicked off of social media because of the haters. It's wrong. It's wrong. And as soon as we start losing these rights, and because we're causing it through these bashing campaigns, it's a slippery slope. We all
and here's
lose.
What's funny? It's not the left that's reporting all my posts and videos and getting me banned. It's the community, the haters in the community that are doing it.
And if you don't like it, then that's fine.
Right.
The only thing that I would say is the only thing that you must do is have a tourniquet. Have a tourniquet, know how to use it.
Yep.
Whatever that tourniquet is, have a tourniquet, know how to use it. Whether it's mine or whether it's the one that's invented the day after tomorrow by a genius that comes along, a genius kid in his garage. Have a tourniquet.
Yep. A kid at Virginia Tech that was a Boy Scout saved his own life by making a tourniquet out of a lamp cord. I bet he would like to have had a rat's.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's where we did a video of a bunch of hasty tourniquets. I shut down blood flow in my leg with paracord. Now I just heard screams going off in the rafters, right? Because you can't use paracord as a tourniquet. Well, if you wrap it enough times, you can shut down blood flow. And guess what? Could you potentially cause damage? I didn't cause any damage to my leg, and I shut the blood flow down, confirmed by Doppler, shut the blood flow down in my big legs. And guess what? I'm still alive. I didn't get tissue necrosis. I don't have, nerve damage in my legs or anything like that. Now, I'm not saying that you can carry around paracord and use that as a tourniquet. Right. But what I am saying, that's not what Jeff Kirkham said you can use paracord as a tourniquet. No, I said it works. I didn't say it is a technique. It is not the technique. But in lieu of nothing else, you've got to know how to do it. And, and wrapping it multiple times, surgical tubing wrapped multiple times. This is better surgical tubing wrapped multiple times to stop. That's it. Yep. Super simple, super easy. Why is that so controversial? I've not been able to. Why is that? Why is this so controversial? It's surgical tubing with a boat cleat. Let's call it what it is. And with a nice little nylon sheath
as Americans, on there. We're kind of snobs. Everything needs to be complex and complicated and all that stuff. And it's certainly, that's not camouflage. It's fucking neon green, so you're fucked up right there.
Well, you know why we started making it neon green? Because we had so many people asking us for bright colors because they're like, I'm not Tactical Joe. I want to be able to see
dude,
what I'm doing.
if there's no Velcro on that for me to put a patch on, it's fucking done right there.
It's a no-go. It's a no-go. We can't use that. We can't. There's no Velcro. What are you talking about? You know. Times change, man. Times change. Things evolve. Things get better. Thank God, things get better. You know, and that's where we should be. That's where we should say, hey, the proof of a wicked sharp mind is educated, reasonable debate.
Mm-hmm. Point, counterpoint.
So do you want to be, do you want, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying point, counterpoint.
Point, counterpoint. Yeah. I mean, you're laughing. What are they
Velcro
asking?
The Gen 3.
I'll see what I can do.
Man, I guess that's it, Jet. Unless you got something else.
I just try to keep things as simple as possible. I'm a simple guy. I don't like drama, but I'm an old soldier, man. And it's like, you push me. You know what? Yeah, I got mad. I got mad. You know, did I make some of the best decisions there? You know, yeah, it's like, okay, well, maybe I could have thought that through a little bit. I know
that might be fucked up, but they're still James Yeager approved.
I will always tell people, yeah, James Yeager, he's a good American and he's a friend. And it's like, and just like what I said to you before, he's crazy. He's a madman, but you know what? He is a good American. He's a patriot. He cares. And you know what? I never have to doubt what comes out of his mouth is the truth, because I know it's the truth, because that guy just does not give a rat's ass what anybody thinks. He's going to tell you what he thinks. But thank goodness, man. What a breath of fresh air, right? What a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I guess, Shelton, I guess we'll cut this off. We're over, and I think we've gotten all the questions. So Shelton is actually doing this remotely tonight. He's got a fever, and he came up here earlier and spread jaundice all through the fucking place.
Infectious disease. That's not my medical side.
Yeah, all right. Your responsibility to be ready for the fight never ends. Thank you, Shelton.
Thanks.